What if the scariest thing Emu did to Rocks at God Valley wasn't turning him into a demon? What if Emu also took something from him? Because after chapter 1191, there is something very strange about Emu's new transformation. The body becomes much larger, 4 horns appear, the arms turn black, and the overall silhouette immediately brings demonized Rocks back to mind. The obvious theory is that Emu is copying Rocks, but I think Domi Reversi gives us a much more interesting possibility. Maybe the connection works both ways. And to understand that, we have to go back to chapter 1150, because Oda actually showed us the rules of Domi Reversi pretty clearly. Emu is controlling Gunko's body when Bragi grabs them. Emu blows off Bragi's hand, creates a circle beneath him, and forcibly establishes a covenant. Then Emu explains the exchange. Bragi gives up part of his lifespan. In return, he receives enormous strength and an undying body. But there is a price beyond the lifespan. By being bound to Emu, he loses his normal reason and becomes obedient to Emu's commands. Then his body physically changes. Bragi becomes much larger and develops demonic features, including horns, fangs, and wings. Doi is transformed as well, and several other members of the giant warrior pirates are later turned into demons too. That part is important. These are different people, but Domi Reversi pushes all of them toward the same general demonic state. And Emu even says that demons are the proper form for living beings. So Domi Reversi is clearly more than simple mind control. It changes the body, increases power, gives the victim an almost impossible level of survivability, and places that person under Emu's authority. Now go back 38 years. God Valley. Chapter 1163 finally showed us what actually happened to Rocks D. Xebec. Emu manifests through Saturn, and eventually Rocks, Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom all attack Emu at the same time. They destroy Emu's body, and Emu simply regenerates. Then Emu notices Rocks' wife Eris and his son Teach trying to escape. Rocks immediately goes after Emu, but Emu catches him, impales him, and uses the exact same technique we saw on Elbaf, Domi Reversi, and Emu orders Rocks to kill his own wife and child. Chapter 1164 makes the situation even worse. Rocks fights against the transformation for as long as he can. He continues provoking Emu over Davy Jones and Joy Boy, but eventually Domi Reversi takes control. And once Rocks is fully demonized, the power increase is insane. He attacks Kaido and Big Mom. He clashes with Whitebeard. He goes after Eris and Teach until Kuma manages to save them. And after Emu believes Rocks' family is gone, Rocks is ordered to eliminate the remaining witnesses on God Valley. But Rocks himself is still in there. When Roger and Garp finally stand in front of him, Rocks is crying, and despite his body being controlled, they hear him begging them to kill him. So this wasn't Rocks revealing some secret transformation of his own. The manga makes the source clear. Emu did this to him. And that is where chapter 1191 becomes so interesting, because in the currently available chapter material, Emu reveals another transformation. The body becomes significantly larger, 4 horns appear, and the arms become black. Then Emu recognizes Gabon from God Valley, and directly connects him to Rocks, saying that Gabon should have been eliminated back then as well. Now, the order of events matters here. Emu transforms before making that comment, so we cannot say that Emu thinks about Rocks and then intentionally transforms into him. That did not happen. But visually, there is still enough overlap between this new Emu form and demonized Rocks to raise a really interesting question. What if Rocks looked like Emu because Domi Reversi was turning Rocks into something closer to Emu? Bragi receives Domi Reversi and becomes demonic. Doi receives it and becomes demonic. Other giants receive it and become demonic. Rocks receives it and becomes demonic. And now Emu shows an even more extreme demonic transformation. There is only one character connecting every single one of those transformations: Emu. So maybe Domi Reversi works like a template. The victim keeps their original body, which is why Bragi still looks like Bragi and Rocks still looks like Rocks, but Emu's power is layered on top of them. That would explain why completely different people begin developing similar traits after being bound to Emu. But this is where I think the theory can go one step further, because everything I've described until now is something the manga actually shows us. This next part is not confirmed. This is the theory. What if the Covenant covenant is a two-way exchange. We already know what the victim receives: power, an undying body, demonic characteristics, and a connection to Imu. But what if Imu receives something too? And no, the manga has never said that Imu can absorb abilities, but Domi Reversi is literally built around an exchange. So maybe the lifespan isn't the only thing Imu takes. Maybe connecting someone to Domi Reversi allows Imu to preserve something from that person: their physical potential, their natural strength, their racial characteristics, maybe even aspects of their abilities. Think about how dangerous that becomes when the person on the other side of the covenant is Rox D. Xebec. Rox was already a monster before Imu touched him. He was powerful enough to stand alongside Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom in the attack against Imu. So God Valley may have given Imu access to one of the strongest bodies of that entire era. And maybe that connection never completely disappeared. Maybe Domi Reversi does two things at once. Imu puts part of its demonic power into you and takes part of you back. That would completely change the meaning of Imu's new form. Maybe Imu isn't simply copying Rox. Maybe part of Rox was preserved through the Covenant, his physical traits, his combat potential, a template of his body. We don't know exactly what could be taken, so I wouldn't say Imu definitely has Rox's abilities. But if Oda reveals that Domi Reversi allows Imu to retain something from its victims, then Rox becomes the biggest clue we have ever had. And suddenly Imu's entire design becomes much more interesting. Because what if we are trying to identify Imu as one specific race when that is the wrong question? Imu has existed since the formation of the world government. Chapter 1179 officially identifies this character as Saint Nerona Imu, one of the original 20 and the king of the world. And that same chapter identifies Imu's power with the wording Akuma no Mi, literally devil's fruit. Oda still has not given us the complete explanation of what that power actually is. But look at what Imu has already demonstrated: possession, abyss circles, regeneration, demonic transformation, contracts, the ability to transform other people into demons, and incredible hockey. Now imagine Domi Reversi has been available to Imu for centuries. How many people could have been connected to that power? How many warriors? How many kings? How many races? How many monsters from history that no longer exist? And if some part of every powerful victim remains inside Imu's power, then Imu wouldn't need one natural fighting form anymore. Imu could become a living collection of the people the world government has conquered. And thematically, that would be perfect, because that is exactly what the world government does. It takes countries, it takes freedom, it takes history, it decides what is allowed to survive, and erases everything else. So what if Imu does the same thing to people? Take what is useful, keep it, control the original, and eventually erase them. That would also give us an incredible contrast between Imu and Luffy. Luffy gathers people around him without taking away who they are. Think about the Straw Hats. Every single one of them remains completely different. Different dreams, different personalities, different fighting styles, different backgrounds. Luffy's greatest ability has always been bringing people together while allowing them to remain free. Imu does the exact opposite. Imu creates unity by removing individuality. Dory and Broggy don't become allies. They become servants. Rox doesn't choose to fight for Imu. His body is forced to do it. Luffy creates a group of people who would willingly die for him. Imu creates people who no longer have the freedom to refuse. And if our absorption theory is correct, the contrast goes even deeper. Luffy grows because of the people around him. Imu grows by taking from them. Luffy inherits wills. Imu collects power. One preserves the individual, the other consumes it. And I think Rox could eventually become the proof, because there is another reason God Valley matters so much. Imu didn't use Domi Reversi on some random soldier. Imu used it on the strongest enemy available. Instead of killing Rox immediately, Imu turned him into a weapon and sent him against his own side. That is already confirmed. But maybe there was a second benefit we haven't been told about yet. Maybe Rox became part of Imu's arsenal. And if that is what chapter 1191 is beginning to hint at, then we should pay very close attention to every transformation Imu uses from this point forward. Because if another form appears with recognizable characteristics from someone connected to Imu in the past, this theory becomes much harder to ignore. A giant. A member of an extinct race. Someone from the Void Century. Maybe even another legendary pirate. And that could eventually explain why Oda has given Imu such a strange collection of powers. Maybe we are not looking at one ability with 20 completely completely unrelated techniques. Maybe we are looking at hundreds of years of accumulated power. There is even a more extreme possibility. What if Domi Reversi doesn't just store physical characteristics? What if certain abilities can be retained too? Again, there is no confirmation of this yet, but imagine the implications. Imu has potentially had 8 centuries to build this collection. That would make the final battle completely different from what we expect. Luffy wouldn't simply be fighting one ancient king with one devil fruit. He would be fighting pieces of history itself. Every generation Imu conquered, every monster Imu controlled, every power the world government refused to let disappear because it could still be useful. And rocks may have been one of the greatest prizes in that collection. Which brings us back to chapter 1191. Maybe everyone had the right instinct when they looked at Imu's transformation and thought of rocks, but maybe we were looking at the connection in the wrong direction. At God Valley, Imu forced its demonic nature into rocks, and at the same time, maybe rocks left something behind inside Imu. That would make Domi Reversi far more terrifying than simple possession. It would be a two-way covenant. Imu gives you the devil, and the devil takes a piece of you. So if Imu reveals another transformation after this, don't just ask what kind of demon Imu is. Ask a different question. Who are we looking at? Because the final enemy of One Piece might not have one true fighting form at all. Imu may have spent 800 years building it from everyone else.